Silence is one of the most underestimated tools that God gives his chosen ones, yet it carries a power that many fail to recognize until it is too late. When God instructs someone to remain completely silent, he is not asking them to withhold information out of fear or mistrust. He is asking them to step into a divine rhythm that cannot be rushed, interrupted, or diluted by human words. The next 72 hours in this context are not merely a period of waiting, they are a sacred window in which heaven orchestrates events, aligns forces, and maneuvers circumstances in a way that the human mind cannot comprehend. Every word spoken during this time has the potential to alter the precision of what God is setting in motion. Many people underestimate how much power is in restraint. They think silence is emptiness, a void, or a passive state, but divine silence is actually active, intentional, and strategic. It is a form of obedience that speaks louder than any explanation or argument. To remain silent in this period is to honor the authority of God, to recognize that His plan is far greater than any human reasoning, and to understand that timing is everything. There are moments in life when speaking can release blessings too early, expose plans to unnecessary opposition, or divert attention from the intended purpose. The next 72 hours are such a moment, and God is granting a sacred pause, a time for you to align with His timing and allow His wisdom to dictate the flow of events. Silence is not just a lack of speech, it is an active engagement in spiritual discipline. It is a posture of humility, a recognition that your words are not required to justify or validate what God is already doing. When you are silent, you remove the interference of fear, doubt, and human reasoning, which often manifest in unnecessary talking. Silence in obedience creates space for God to work in ways that cannot be seen, anticipated, or manipulated. There is a spiritual dimension to this period of silence that goes beyond what the eyes can see and the ears can hear. Angels are dispatched, strategies are set, and outcomes are sealed in heaven when the chosen one refrains from speaking. Every word spoken has energy, and every conversation carries influence. During this time, even casual remarks or seemingly harmless comments could unintentionally shift the outcome that God is orchestrating. This is why the instruction is clear and uncompromising: shut your mouth completely. It is not negotiable because the stakes are high, and the consequences of disobedience could delay or disrupt the manifestation of God's purpose. Silence is a shield, a protective boundary that safeguards your spiritual integrity, your mission, and the divine favor that is being poured upon you. Those who struggle with silence often feel restless, impatient, or compelled to explain themselves, but these feelings are part of the process, not a signal to speak. The restlessness is a sign that God is preparing you for something significant, and that your obedience is required in a moment when human instincts would normally urge you to act. Remaining silent is a demonstration of trust, a signal to God that you are willing to yield your control, your reasoning, and your desire to influence the situation. It is an act of faith, a statement that you believe God's timing is perfect and that His wisdom surpasses your own understanding. During these 72 hours, it is crucial to recognize that silence is not empty. It is filled with spiritual activity, divine intervention, and invisible movement. While the world may perceive inaction or quiet as weakness, God sees alignment, preparation, and readiness. By refraining from speech, you are creating a sacred space for God's power to manifest in ways that words could never achieve. It is in this silence that you are being positioned for breakthroughs, that doors are being opened, and that situations are being rearranged to favor your purpose. Many people miss this opportunity because they underestimate the value of holding their tongue. They feel compelled to justify themselves, defend their position, or explain their vision, not realizing that doing so prematurely could block the very blessings they are waiting for. Obedience to this command requires discipline, patience, and a willingness to surrender to God's higher wisdom. It is a time to reflect internally, to pray, to meditate on God's promises, and to strengthen your spiritual alignment. Each thought, each moment of restraint, contributes to the fulfillment of what God is preparing. Divine silence is also a test of character. It is one thing to speak when it is convenient or safe, but it is another to remain silent when circumstances tempt you to intervene, clarify, or assert yourself. The measure of your spiritual maturity is reflected in your ability to honor God's instruction without compromise. This period of silence is not just about waiting, it is about actively engaging in a spiritual strategy, positioning yourself in alignment with God's will, and trusting that your obedience will yield results that far exceed anything you could orchestrate with your own words. Understanding the power of silence transforms how you approach every aspect of your spiritual journey. It teaches you patience, discipline, and the art of timing. It also cultivates discernment, allowing you to recognize when speaking is necessary and when it could disrupt divine orchestration. Those who embrace this period of quiet will emerge stronger, wiser, and more attuned to God's guidance, fully prepared to step into the next phase of their purpose with clarity and authority. Obedience to God's instruction is not always comfortable or convenient, but it carries a layer of protection that cannot be replicated by any human effort. When God tells His chosen ones to stay silent, to refrain from speaking, or to step back from acting, it is not a limitation, it is a safeguard. Many people fail to realize that every word spoken or action taken outside of divine timing can open doors to unnecessary interference, complications, or even attacks. The next 72 hours are a critical period in which God is actively moving on your behalf, arranging circumstances, and orchestrating events that your human mind cannot fully comprehend. By obeying His instruction and holding your tongue, you are creating a spiritual shield around yourself, protecting your destiny, your peace, and the divine plans that have been set in motion for your life. This protection is not merely about avoiding danger, it is about ensuring that the blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs that God has promised are not compromised by premature disclosure, misunderstanding, or interference from others who may not understand the significance of what is unfolding. Obedience is a form of spiritual armor. It prevents the draining of energy, the scattering of focus, and the dilution of divine purpose. Many people underestimate how much vulnerability exists in speaking too soon, sharing too much, or explaining too quickly. Words carry weight, influence, and consequences, and when spoken outside of God's timing, they can inadvertently create obstacles rather than solutions. God's instruction to remain silent is a proactive measure designed to preserve your favor and prevent unnecessary complications. Protection through obedience is multidimensional. It safeguards your mental and emotional well-being, shielding you from anxiety, confusion, and regret that often accompany premature action. It protects your relationships, ensuring that the right information reaches the right people at the right time. It also protects your spiritual alignment, keeping you in step with God's plan rather than being swayed by human pressures or societal expectations. The next 72 hours are a time of divine security. When you follow God's instruction without questioning, resisting, or rationalizing, you are effectively placing yourself under His direct protection. Angels are dispatched, unseen forces are positioned, and doors are prepared to open, all while you remain quiet and obedient. Your silence acts as a buffer, creating space for God to maneuver circumstances in a way that maximizes blessing and minimizes interference. Many people struggle with the concept of protection through obedience because it requires surrender and trust. Human instincts often demand action, explanation, or justification, but these instincts, if acted upon, can compromise safety, delay timing, or invite complications. By choosing obedience, you are consciously submitting to a higher wisdom that sees the full picture, understands the timing, and knows the potential threats that are invisible to the human eye. Obedience also cultivates discernment. It teaches you to recognize the difference between what needs to be acted upon immediately and what must be entrusted to God's timing. This discernment becomes a protective mechanism in itself, guiding you in future situations where decisions, words, and actions could have significant consequences. During these 72 hours, obedience is not passive, it is an active engagement with God's plan. By following His instruction, you are not merely waiting, you are participating in a strategic alignment that ensures your safety and positions you for success. Each moment of restraint, Each decision to remain silent contributes to a protective barrier that preserves the integrity of the mission God has entrusted to you. Protection through obedience also extends to your reputation and influence. Speaking or acting prematurely can expose your intentions to those who might misinterpret, oppose, or manipulate the situation. Silence, on the other hand, safeguards your credibility and preserves the element of divine surprise, allowing God to reveal outcomes in His perfect timing. This is why God's instruction is uncompromising. The directive to shut your mouth completely is a preventive measure that shields you from unnecessary interference, obstacles, and delays. It is a call to trust, to submit, and to rely fully on His guidance. Many times, people experience breakthroughs not because they acted quickly or spoke boldly, but because they waited, obeyed, and allowed God to orchestrate circumstances beyond their control. Obedience transforms vulnerability into security. It turns moments of uncertainty into periods of divine protection. It demonstrates faith, not in human understanding, but in God's wisdom and timing. Those who embrace this instruction will find that the invisible shield around them is stronger than any visible barrier, guarding them against opposition, miscommunication, and the consequences of impatience. The 72-hour period is a spiritual incubator, a protected space where divine strategies are implemented without interruption. By choosing obedience, you align yourself with this protective dimension, ensuring that what God is setting into motion is not disrupted by human error, interference, or misunderstanding. Protection through obedience also brings peace. The mind, heart, and spirit are preserved from anxiety, fear, and the temptation to control outcomes. You are allowed to rest, knowing that God is actively working on your behalf, that no force can derail what is divinely appointed, and that your role is simply to trust and remain aligned. In this obedience, you become untouchable in the spiritual sense, insulated from unnecessary attacks and complications that could have arisen from speaking or acting too soon. Obedience is not restriction, it is a shield, a layer of divine protection that ensures that every step, every word, and every moment aligns perfectly with God's intended plan for your life. Strategic positioning is a concept that many people overlook, yet it is one of the most critical elements in the life of a chosen one. God's instruction to remain completely silent for the next 72 hours is not arbitrary, and it is not simply a test of patience or endurance. It is a deliberate strategy designed to align you with the precise timing of divine breakthroughs. Everything that is happening in these 3 days is part of a larger spiritual choreography, and your obedience in remaining silent ensures that you are positioned correctly within it. When God asks you to hold your tongue, He is guiding you into a place where your words, actions, and intentions will intersect with His plan in the most powerful way possible. This is the principle of strategic positioning, recognizing that timing, alignment, and obedience are far more important than immediate action or reaction. The next 72 hours are a sacred window in which God is arranging circumstances, shifting alliances, and preparing opportunities that will lead to significant advancement in your life. Speaking prematurely or attempting to force a situation can disrupt this alignment, potentially delaying or diminishing the impact of what God is orchestrating. Strategic positioning requires trust, faith, and discipline. It demands that you surrender your need to control outcomes and accept that God's plan is unfolding with perfect precision. This period of silence is a spiritual positioning tool, ensuring that when the breakthrough occurs, it comes with maximum impact and minimal resistance. Many people fail to understand that breakthroughs are rarely random, they are the result of intentional divine arrangements, and your role is to position yourself in a way that allows these arrangements to manifest fully. When you remain silent, you are creating space for God to work unhindered, for opportunities to align, and for obstacles to be removed without your intervention. Your obedience acts as a form of leverage, allowing divine forces to operate in ways that human effort alone could never achieve. Strategic positioning is also about preparation. Silence gives you the opportunity to reflect, recalibrate, and attune your mind, heart, and spirit to God's purpose. During these 72 hours, you are being positioned not only in the external circumstances of your life but also internally, aligning your mindset, emotions, and spiritual awareness with the breakthrough that is coming. This preparation is essential because it ensures that when doors open, you are ready to step through with clarity, confidence, and authority. God's timing is perfect, but it requires your cooperation. Your obedience in remaining silent is an act of alignment with His timing, a conscious choice to allow divine forces to operate without interference. It is a recognition that your breakthrough is not solely dependent on your words, efforts, or strategies, but on God's orchestration of events. Strategic positioning also involves discernment. By remaining silent, you are learning to distinguish between what requires immediate action and what must be entrusted to God's timing. This discernment protects you from impulsive decisions, miscommunication, and distractions that could compromise the outcome. Each moment of restraint, each act of obedience, reinforces your position in the divine plan, ensuring that when the breakthrough arrives, it is not only significant but also sustainable and aligned with God's will. The next 72 hours are a period of unseen movement. While the world may not notice anything changing, God is actively rearranging circumstances, people, and situations to ensure that you are in the right place at the right time. Your silence allows this divine repositioning to occur without interference, ensuring that every element aligns perfectly for maximum effect. Strategic positioning is not passive, it is an active form of obedience that requires focus, discipline, and faith. By choosing to remain silent, you are actively participating in the execution of God's plan, allowing divine forces to operate in ways that would be impossible if you were speaking, explaining, or reacting. Your obedience amplifies the power of the breakthrough, creating a momentum that cannot be achieved through human effort alone. This period of strategic positioning also prepares you for the challenges and opportunities that accompany breakthroughs. By remaining silent and aligned with God's timing, you develop patience, resilience, and clarity, all of which are essential for handling the impact of what is coming. The breakthrough is not just about receiving blessings, it is about being positioned to manage, sustain, and expand them in alignment with God's purpose. Strategic positioning ensures that your breakthrough is not temporary or superficial. It sets the stage for lasting transformation, providing the foundation for continued growth, influence, and divine favor. Silence during this time is a tool for alignment, protection, and empowerment, ensuring that you are fully prepared to receive the results of God's orchestration. Many people miss this opportunity because they fail to recognize the importance of timing, obedience, and alignment. They speak too soon, act prematurely, or try to force outcomes, which disrupts the divine flow and delays the manifestation of blessings. By embracing this period of silence, you are positioning yourself strategically, allowing God to move in ways that exceed your expectations and fulfill His promises in your life. Strategic positioning is ultimately about trust in God's wisdom, trust in His timing, and trust in His ability to orchestrate breakthroughs that align perfectly with your purpose. When you honor this period of silence, you are placing yourself in the perfect position to experience the fullness of what God has prepared, ensuring that your breakthrough is powerful, aligned, and divinely orchestrated.